Welcome to AIS's Asking Architects. We are joined by Gabriella Burmey. I hope I pronounced that right. Bermea.
Yeah,
okay. Gabriella Bermea. And I always like to start from the beginning. So what sparked your interest in studying and pursuing architecture?
Yeah, hi, thank you so much for having me. I wish I could tell you that I knew from when I was a kid. Absolutely not. I think pursuing architecture is something I'm constantly reaffirmed by the opportunity to work with our clients and our students and our educators. So I do K through 12. That is my bread and butter. But for me, I took a drafting course in high school, like many of us, right? And had a teacher, Ms. Doris McCaslin, Mr. Mack, who saw something in me and said, I think you could be good at architecture. I really was set on engineering. And he said, I think this would be a great choice for you. And I looked into the program. I didn't meet my first architect until I was 18. I met Bruce Birnbaum out at Birnbaum Magadini Architects. They were a high residential firm, a high luxury residential firm out in Dallas. My dad drove me from Texarkana, which is Northeast Texas, to Dallas, about 3.5 hours away. And I sat and I listened and I absorbed, and I probably got the best piece of advice I could have gotten, because I was thinking about schools, right? Very nervous on what I wanted to do. And he said, look, the school that you go to, what matters is when you get into the workforce, how you treat other people, how you work ethically, and how you build relationships. That's what people are going to remember beyond your school. And school is a great way to engage with new voices and peers. I've met some of my best friends through school. But when you get into the work environment, when you get into that experience part of the AXP, right, that's what triggered for me. I can see myself doing this for the rest of my life. And like I said, it's constantly reaffirmed that every client meeting, sometimes some are better than others, but it is just an ongoing learning experience. And I'm grateful for it. I'm all about people. So I was like, as long as I'm in a profession where I'm helping someone or I'm serving others, I know I'm doing what I need to be doing.
Lovely. And it's so nice to hear that you had a drafting course in high school. So many of our AIS high school chapters also have some sort of drafting or, one of those side classes to really just get them in the door and be exposed. And what an amazing opportunity to meet an actual architect at 18.
I know.
I don't think I met a licensed architect until college. Yeah, because then our professors were licensed.
That is insane.
Yeah, to go 18 years that you're in these buildings, someone built my elementary school, someone built my favorite restaurant. It would just be nice to know who.
Yes, exactly. That's I'll talk about this a little bit too. That's a big part of my platform. Is I think licensed architects need to be in the forefront of our communities and be visible and be seen. And that's a lot of where my extracurriculars and my work life actually all kind of line up with.
Amazing. Yeah, and we could get a bit into it as well. If you'd love to tell us a bit about your current role and your journey into it.
Absolutely. So I'm an associate and a design architect here with VLK Architects in Austin. We are headquartered in Fort Worth. That's where I'm at today in our beautiful, beautiful studio. I have been a part of VLK for almost 3 years now. In May, it'll actually be 3 years for me, which is insane. I made the move in the middle of the pandemic, kind of taking a leap of faith. This is my 7th year in K through 12 design. I was very fortunate to have had a great internship and out of college experience with another firm also in K through 12. And it really, like I said, set my path forward to say, I want to be an architect that is accessible for our communities, work on design and architecture that will last generations. And that is why I was dead set on K-12 the minute I got the chance to. These are 50 to 100-year buildings that quite literally generations experience, and to be able to have a part in that design process puts a responsibility on my end, puts a responsibility on our teams, and to be thoughtful in our questions and to engage the stakeholders and the community members everywhere from the student who's going to be there in 10 years to the teacher who spends 14 hours a day there everyone needs a voice in that process. And I'm just thankful to have had that alignment with VLK really early on. And, it's when you step in a firm and you're like, they get it, I get it, let's go. And thankful I've just kind of kept going from there.
Absolutely, so wonderful. I feel like K through 12 definitely doesn't get all the light that it should. So many of my classmates, like when we were in school, like when we had like a lottery system. So when we heard like I think it was elementary and then middle school, so K through 8, everyone jumped on the project. It was like it's so hard to get to that studio, and they loved it, and they were like, "This is something like I could see myself," very similar to what I'm hearing from you.
That makes me so excited because we need K through 12 designers. We need, well, designers in general, architects in general, right? We need to diversify and engage our profession. But to hear that educational architecture is getting some leeway, I love that. There's so much that gets impacted, right? You're talking about learning pedagogies, you're talking about athletics, you're talking about fine arts and CTE, things that will plug in and affect the workplace. So you get the bigger picture of the entire student. Oh, it's awesome.
Absolutely. And I know you mentioned a bit about your extracurricular activities. Would you mind giving us some insight on maybe what a day in your life is or a in your life?
Okay, let's buckle up. No, so like I said, I have been in K through 12 architectures for about 7 years now. I'll enter my 8th year in May. And as soon as I got in, I was very mentor forward. So I did student government and basically from high school all the way through college. I was part of our university student government system and was kind of built on this mentality that I need to serve and give back. I cannot just, I love my job. I love what I get to do every day, but we are architects. And I've heard our president, Emily Grandstaff Rice, mention that in one of her keynotes for our TXA leadership retreat, for Texas Society of Architects leadership retreat, that, in order to be more visible, we need to be at the forefront. We need to be engaged with our partners everywhere from legislative policies. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be going to Architects Day. I serve as a chair on our state. I was one of our state committees for the state of Texas. And then I also am a board member for our AIA Austin for our local chapter. And I serve on the advisory committee, which is one of the leadership team for the Young Architects Forum as communications director. So I get this really cool line, like a straight alignment of amplifying the voices of architects from the national, the state, and the local level. Alongside that, I am in my 5th year serving on the board for the ACE Mentor Program of Austin. I love ACE. I don't know, I can't even tell you how many students who I've met in university who have been a part of ACE, or people who I work with professionally who are a part of ACE. It is a fantastic program that is very, very popular in the Northeast region. Here in Texas, we have just seen phenomenal growth and interest because you're not only hitting those who are interested in architecture, but in construction, engineering, and our allied professions and trades. So in having that full circle, we can build a more well-rounded student prepared for architecture school, or a student who may have thought it wasn't a pathway for them, introduce it in that way. Obviously, I have a little bias towards the architecture side, being a licensed architect, but we try to encourage them to see the bigger picture and understand that the people who are in the room with you now will be your partners when you go into the workforce, when you go into being a contributor for society. I have a number of other things, a lot of VLK internal events. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm an associate. A part of that associate group is being the conduit between our senior leadership and then our new and incoming voices from our emerging professionals on. That conduit has been incredible. Also part of our culture and visioning syndicate here with VLK. I'm giving you all the big stories. Use it as you want, but I love being the part of a firm that has their ear on the pulse and is really trying to understand and listen to our constituents, listen to not only our clients, but our people, really focused on the people in the firm and the people who we are serving.
That sounds amazing. What a wonderful day or week in your life. It's always yeah. It's always nice to hear a spotlight on ACE. I also did ACE in the Northeast. So that is actually that kind of helped me, choose architecture versus engineering construction. No hate, just love to architecture. Um, So glad to hear that you're part of that. And like just plus one to everything you said about like the networking and the allied organizations. Like it's as you're describing it, just again reaffirms for me like architecture and design is such a community. It needs everyone to participate, whether it be policy, whether it be like engagement with the users, whether it be making sure everything's safe for everything. Yeah, for the project. So nice to hear great work being done in the South in Texas.
I love hearing that you're staying alone. See, I told you, it's great. It's just this ongoing connection. It's incredible.
Yeah. And it's always so funny because it really is a small world. And that especially in this role, I get reminded almost every single day about that. So then I have to ask you, out of all the things that you do with your extracurriculars, maybe what's one of your favorite program, or like what's one of your favorite events to do?
Oh, okay. That's a tough one. That is a tough one because I recently came back from our YAF summit, or YAF, the Young Architects Forum, if I refer to it that way. And we had all of the 50 representatives. We recently went from a yard, which is a regional director model, to a state model. So now we have nearly 50 representatives from states and territories in the US. And then our leadership alum. I have to say the energy in that room. I'm personally going to be editor-in-chief for Connection magazine. I'm acting in that role. Thank you. But to hear the voices and the energy that was coming out of there was everyone was focused on the same thing, on catalyzing for change and becoming architects in action. So I'd say most recently that one has been my favorite. I also very much love. I'm a volunteer on the NCARB side. I work on the experience committee. So any chance I have to tie the licensure process with our emerging professionals at work and with the students at ACE, I do. I try to help people start their NCARB record as soon as possible. Say, our priority is we want to see licensed architects. There's a value to licensure that comes alongside it. And if you're going through architecture school, I'd hope you at least have the resources and the voice to be able to do that. And any way I can plug in, that's my plug. That's a good way to get in.
I support. And thinking about again all the things that you juggle, and maybe to on a more serious question is how do you balance everything? Whether it be work, extracurriculars, your personal life. So many of our members just have also family lives, or just want to travel the world. So how do you find balancing everything, and maybe talk to you a bit about your journey? Because I'm sure there was ups and I'm sure there were downs.
Absolutely. Sometimes are much more busy than others. I'll say that. I try to take a long look when volunteer opportunities come and question, is this something that I'll be proud of 10 years down the road? Is this something I'll be proud of tomorrow? Something that I can explain enough to share with the group? Is this something that'll pursue the mission of increasing more licensed architects in our field? Sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. What I look for also is alignments. So there are a number of the ands in our allied organization, right? You think of the Venn diagram, you have this and this. I try to find those middle ground that, okay, I'm creating content for my state's magazine that's based off the creativity that I'm seeing from our firms in Texas, the creativity that I'm getting to experience as a K-12 architect. I need, you get filled with this energy and I have to pour it back out in some way. And for me, that has been through writing, through publications, through content. So I asked, how can I get content and make it something that I can double up with? How can we volunteer with that? And that is how opportunities like the YAF came up, opportunities like writing for the state magazine, opportunities like chairing a committee. But in turn, what ends up happening is each of those are directly tied into the same outcomes and the same results. So I would encourage the AIAS cohort to find those ands, right? It also helps that I married someone who is an architect as well. So on the pursuit of licensure. So having that dynamic, he completely understands. And we met really early on, like we met in school, we met in studio together. So having a partner and having a support system, beyond that, looking, at friend groups, looking at family groups, knowing that, it is going to be tight at times, but when we're moving forward, we're all on the same mission. We're both very mission oriented. That allows us to take strides together. So I would say look for the ands, and then look for your support group that can help bolster you and help you with discernment on what things to say yes to and what things may be worth putting pause on and coming back to at a later date.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm so every time I think of our members, I just get like teary-eyed because of how all the great things they've like done. Like so many of our members and legacy have just been like a chapter president, then they came to a conference, and then they sat on a committee, and then they were president, and then they like, was editor in chief, and it's just all these overlapping roles of like the amount of dedication they have towards AIS is like I'm forever grateful, and it's just so nice to see other communities have that level of commitment and really pushing that mission because it takes all of us.
It really does. It really does. I'm so glad you say that, because that talks about opportunities, and when you are in the room and you get the chance to step into that role, you're setting a precedent for the person who is watching you. And they're saying, wow, look at this person go. I want to do the exact same thing and more. How can I make this connection? It's all about relationships. It's all about people. I think that's the best part of being an architect, right? We have the chance to interpret and talk and partner with organizations like AIA and have such a strong backing by those allied organizations. Is just so impressive to me. And I'm excited for you. Get in all the rooms, get in all the rooms.
Yeah, definitely getting in all these rooms. Like there'll always be rooms, which is always nice to think of. And it's just nice to know that like there's already people we probably already know because of how small the field is. So it's like, you know, it's just an amazing experience time and time again. And on the note of, kind of looking at architecture and our community at large, what are some opportunities and challenges the field faces that, is top of mind lately?
What's been top of mind for me really is ensuring that people get equitable experience when they come into the firms. And also the same element of, are you getting into the education? So when we look at the overall pipeline, this is something I'm very passionate about, being the EDI chair for the state of Texas, is where we're finding our pinch points more and more. We are graduating almost 50% of women from the classes, which is great. That is fantastic. That means education is doing what it needs to do. And then we look at studies like the baseline on belonging that say, it's disproportionately disadvantaged to underrepresented populations like Latinos, like myself, like my husband. And you ask yourself, where are the discrepancies? Where are these, why is this happening? Right. And so we have to really take a look at what is the AXP experience look like for everyone? How can we baseline that process? We have the 96 tests, which are fantastic. What the NCARB resources have are excellent. What we need are licensed architects and encouragers, those who said, we will walk you through this process together. As far as the future of work, I think work is going to greatly change in the coming years, right? The more we talk about artificial intelligence, that was a big part of our mission 2130 for the upcoming connection will be entirely focused on the work we had that was done in mission 2130, which was the YAF's annual every 5 years they do a summit. And in that, they really took a close dive on what artificial intelligence did for the future of work, not only in 2030, right? We talked about Challenge 2030, but 2130. How will sustainability affect us in the long run? How will engaging with new voices impact us? So I think that there's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot on the horizon. But for right now, where my primary focus is, my 5-year focus is on our people, on growing our people within the firm, on growing people like yourself that are in AAS doing the incredible things just on a skyrocketed path. I think there's such value to relationships and creating things like this.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are so many topics that like, my peers and like even our leaders that we see, our chapter leaders that we see, like they talk about it, like they know these stats, like they read these reports. And like if you haven't read it, there, we meet them with such enthusiasm, like here's the PDF, like we'll airdrop it to you. So it's like it's been really interesting to be able to use the statistics and like get a realistic understanding of what we're walking into, but then also seeing those opportunities of where we can be those change makers. And again, look to leaders like you who are again across the country. And it's not like one hub is just doing it all. It's like everywhere in the country, there's always some inching forward. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. I had the chance to, actually, one of the young women who I graduated with, Shadia Rasul Haramil, she serves on the board for AI Florida, and she had invited me to be a speaker on one of their most recent conferences back in July of 22. And in that, you would be surprised at how many opportunities came from that, because I was talking about ACE, I was talking about Association for Learning Environments, I was talking about AIA, and in describing this, there were people in the room who said, I absolutely get it. I love this. How can we do it here? I was hearing things like what Black Architects in the Making with BAM is doing out in Miami, out in Florida. If you haven't had the chance to, I will connect you there. That was Craig. He is just incredible and fantastic. They're doing wonderful things for equity in the profession. So then later this year, I'll get the chance to go speak at AI National Conference on Architecture in San Francisco. And we are already like starting ACE networking events, because that'll be our topic. I'll be a panelist speaking on ACE in Texas, along with Samantha Markham and Laura Carrera, both out of Texas, out of Dallas and Houston, respectively. So I think that having those touch points and being in the room, whether that's, if you don't hear anyone talking about it, go for it. Just do it. Find someone who will help you put together that proposal, that panel, that paper, and you will get those connections of other like-minded individuals who are saying, I love what you're doing. Let's do it here. I love what you're doing. Let's do it here. It needs to be something that is just widespread. It takes all of us.
Exactly, and even to your point earlier about how it's always a learning process, like, I'm sure like, the things I know now at 23, like, I'm sure I'll there's so much more to learn, and just nice to be able to exchange that information generously, as well as, like, I don't know, it's always a yes and, going back on that and thing.
Exactly. I feel like
Um,
we're in improv classes right now. It is very much yes and.
exactly. And again, staying on the topic of like, the architecture community at large, or even maybe potentially outside, who do you look up to, both in terms of women in architecture, construction and engineering, and in general?
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad you asked that question. So I think um, literary and thought-wise, Brene Brown is the first person who comes to my mind. She was a speaker at one of our most recent conferences, one of our educators' most recent conferences, TASA here in Texas. And just how she's focused on leading with vulnerability. She's also a Texan, so that may be what's biased in that piece. That has really been influential for me. And then on women in design, I will shout out entire chapters. What our women in architecture chapter is doing in Austin is just stellar. I mean, you're talking everything from scholarships for licensure candidates, scholarships for high school students, to mothers at work, and having an improvement, having a process there to allow for new moms to come back into the workforce, new moms, new parents. And then the same with the WIA chapter in Houston. And I have to also, I have to shout out our Latinos in architecture chapters and work that, like, and we actually only have, I think it's 7 or 8 chapters all across the US, but we're affiliated with AIA, right? So we are AIA Austin Latinos in Architecture chapter. I served as a past chair. We also have chapters all across Texas and San Francisco. And the work that Chicago is doing with work like Arquitinas and Arquitectos that are pursuing increasing the 1% of licensed female Latina architects. It's just incredible to me. I found a lot of inspiration in, you can hear, I'm very outreach minded and service minded in that realm. I think from a design realm, I look to firms. I look to what some of our other friends or allies are doing. And then I have an incredible, immense respect for my mentors here within BLK themselves. We have Ariane Trost, we have Richard Hunt, Jim Wallace, just a number of people who directly impacted me as a designer in the profession, who have asked me to ask the questions. Like they've mentioned, you will have your own perspective that they don't have, right? That they being them as the other architects. So seeing the bigger picture, allowing your voice to come forward, while understanding and keeping our client first, really listening and engaging. Those are the key skills that I think are our highest priority.
Absolutely. I always love asking these questions because it's just again like broadening our network of like I didn't hear that name or like I definitely know that name. So it just again reaffirms what a small world. But it's also so great to hear leadership not just at your firm, but again, as you even mentioned earlier, local, regionally, and nationally. Um, I know throughout our conversation so far, you dropped a lot of golden nuggets of like advice and things like that. So I'll just ask, do you have any, or what advice would you give to those in high school or in university right now choosing architecture or design?
Yes, I would say for the high school student who is questioning whether or not to go into it, that it's going to be a long road, and there will be times that you'll be tried on whether or not you'll ask yourself, is this what I really want to do? Coming from me, someone who really, I mean, my first couple years in architecture school, I struggled. I'd encourage them to get into a firm, partner with a local area. If you're in a rural area, jump on a Zoom call, jump on LinkedIn, try to find a way to reach out to them. A number of us are outreaching, but in the areas that we're not, ask your CTE directors, ask your career and technology and education directors. They have those resources to help those things happen for you. And buckle up, because it's going to be a good ride. Architecture is a fun profession that is growing and that is doing incredible things. If you want the chance to make an impact for generations, come jump on board. That's how we can do it, by impacting the built environment. For the university student, I'd say for two sides. For the university student who's struggling, you're going to get past it. It's okay. That review is still going to happen, whether or not you get that final plot out. You will be okay. It's continue moving forward, find your support group, find those around you, and keep going. Keep going. There are going to be great things ahead. Get into the workplace. For the new graduate, find a workplace that's aligned with you. You've gotten the chance to do internships. Now is the time to discover who you are as a practitioner, who you are as an individual, and go get that license. Don't put it off. You can do so many things with it once you're finished with it. If you decide to take an alternate career path, there are many ways in, many ways out, but the value of licensure is so critical, is so key. The opportunities that open up beyond having it are worth it. Put in the work, get that license, and go after it.
Love it. Yeah, I really resonate with like your last comments because I'm also a new recent grad, and it's so true. Like, I mean, that's why I ran for vice presidency. It's just like AIS aligned with my mission of leadership, design, and service by empowering students. And it's like it goes such a long way with like the day-to-day 9 to 5 of like I'm in the office all day, but then I'm like I'm doing great work and doing able to do things like this to really amplify that mission. And even with this idea of you kind of like shift the terms of like a practitioner. And it's so interesting because it's like we wear so many hats outside of like being a student, being a sibling, being a designer, being a human, and now being a practitioner. And it's so interesting to think that like, so many of our grads, whether they're graduating this year or this past December, or, even these within this past 5 years, like we are all learning to be practitioners and we get to lean on you for advice and support. And it's just exciting to wear a new hat.
Yes, and be malleable, and don't be afraid to celebrate the accomplishments that you're doing, especially in this year. Speak out to your firms. This opportunity, had the great chance, like I said, to talk with leadership in the firm, talk with our marketing department, and there was great support for it. Sometimes the worst they can say is no, right? So ask the questions. If you're looking for ways to meld what you're doing with your past experience in ACE and with your experience in AIS, with your firm work, ask the questions or start the dialogue. And in turn, new and outstanding things can happen. And you can find out sometimes that there are people who have done that in the past. So when I was going after the YAF position, the YAF AdCom, I reached out to one mentor who I knew had been involved with YAF in the past. And I said, hey, Jennifer Workman out in Dallas. And I said, can I pick your ear for a minute? And I told her about this opportunity and she goes, I was a past YAF chair, right? And I'm like, no, I didn't know you were past YAF chair. We've worked together for 2 years. Why did I never know this? So it's asking the questions, starting the dialogue, and sometimes it has to come from us, right? Because some our people are just going to hold that, right? Because it's been a while or it's past. But you bring that back up and you celebrate them, and then they empower you. It's just we're people. We're people at our core. I'm so glad you said that. Yes, very human.
Absolutely. Um, and we're gonna wrap up with 2 questions. So one is, how can our listeners and readers follow you and your projects?
Yeah, of course. So firm wise, you can follow at VLK Architects. I enunciate them well because there's a lot of 3-letter firms, but this one's my favorite. We are on all of the social media sites. And then for my personal one, it's at Gabby with 2 B's, Gabby, and then last name Bermea, Bermea on Instagram, or Gabriella Bermea on LinkedIn or on Facebook. And I am always happy to connect. I am usually very responsive to messages. I've had a number of students or professionals reach out and say, hey, can we get together? Can we get a coffee? I love coffee, whether it's, this way or it's in person. I'm all about it. The opportunity to change and to be accessible. Like I said, that is my main goal. And that's my mission in making architects more accessible for every population, for every demographic.
Absolutely. And then our very last question, and this is probably the best question I could always ask as kind of a Gen Zer. What's your hottest take on architecture?
Ooh, my hottest take is probably that. Oh, and I don't know that this is really a hot take at all, but why have we been so isolated? Why every time we talk about an outreach event, it is pulled back like, oh, do they really need architects for that? Second, let me take this hot take too, the value of what architect means, what capital A architect means. We just recently, and I know you're in DC, found out the architect of the Capitol, and it's not found out. This has been going on. Is not required to be a licensed architect. Then why is it called an architect? It could be called program manager, facilities manager. When you have content like that, it really devalues what an architect is and what we do as licensed professionals. The same way medical doctors or lawyers are. And I know, again, neither of these are hot takes. I think if I were to ask another architect in the room, they'd say the same thing. But maybe so for outside society, for those who are not in the profession, but that's on us, right? How are we getting out there and describing who we are, what we do, and what's our value add for our clients, for our communities?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, the hot takes is always it's just always a great question because some people are like, what do you mean by that question? Or some other people are like, I have a list. Which one should I start with?
All of them.
I always exactly. Yeah, that rounds out all the questions I have for you. Thanks so much for joining and taking your time. It's just wonderful to always, have AIS engage with professionals in this manner. We'll probably cut it off here in the recording. But do you have any questions for me or anything I could answer?
No, tell me how we can stay involved. Let's make sure to stay plugged in on
Absolutely.
and on social media so I can watch what you're doing too. I'm very excited for this. I'm excited that you are getting this opportunity to talk with other architects around that. I'd imagine is just a wealth of knowledge that you can share on with your population, with the AIAS cohort.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in terms of opportunities, and I always, when anyone asks me that question, I give like a list of things. So next month we're having our South Quad conference in Savannah. So if you're interested in that, I know they're having a career expo for sure, but they also are still developing their programming webinars tour. So if you're interested and if you're in town, we'd love to have you, even just to come by and say hi. And then that's next month. And then in 6 months, so during the summer, we're going to have our national leadership conference. It's called Grassroots. All members are invited, but we gear the programming towards leadership, or people interested in leadership. And that's going to be in Washington, D.C. Again, we pretty much have career expos in every conference, but we're always looking to, expand tours, webinars, workshops, anything to complement that conference. And then also we are always, and then one last conference I'll love to plug is that we're going to have our forum conference. I don't know if you've heard it before.
No,
No
I haven't.
worries. It's kind of the party conference, and this is where all members are invited, and this is really as a touch point for everyone to be like, I'm part of AIS. I'm going to go hang out with AIS people. So it's going to be in the South. Um, um, I'll allude, or maybe I could just mention it because we're going to announce it within a month. But it's going to be in New Orleans in early January. So
Fun.
a very great place to kick off our first in-person forum after, the pandemic in 3 years. 4 years. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, time to try to save
exactly.
sense.
So those are our conferences. So if you're interested in any of those locations or, just opportunities, happy to, we have each other's emails and we could connect. And then on like non-conference related things, we always do online portfolio reviews. We tend to get a lot of master students,
Yeah.
especially some international ones. And then we also always have webinars that are open to everybody. So if there's a particular topic, I know you mentioned so many amazing things. So if there's one that you would love to elaborate in front of students, are happy to have you.
Awesome. Yeah. Let me know how I can stay plugged in with that. I think students are just the future. They really are the future of our work and who we are as professionals. And if we're not equally serving, then what are we doing? We're just going to sit here. So I love that. I'm so excited for you. It's going to be awesome. Let me know where this ends up living too, so I can,
Yeah.
I'm going to share your sign up link. Actually, one of our other YAP
Yes,
advisors,
please do.
yeah, she had, Sarah Nelson Voynich, the founder of Pride by Design, had sent me a thing. She's like, you should definitely look at this. She was showing out all the apps. So I'm probably going to send a lot of our Texas cohort your way as well.
Please do. Please do. More the merrier.
Love it. I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Awesome.
And have a good rest of your week. And hopefully we'll see each other sooner rather than later.
Sounds great to me. All right. You take care.
All right. Bye.